It's a snowy day here. Oh, look behind me, you can see right across the Croft. Beautiful, it's really sunny. Now, permaculture of course is about 9/10 observation, so it's just gone noon, so the sun's at the highest spot it's going to be all day. I'm going to have a little walk around the Croft and see what I can observe, so I thought I'd bring you with me. It's the 23rd of January. This snow wasn't really forecast, but yeah, there was quite a bit. There's a couple of inches, so it's an interesting time to do observations when you've got something like snowfall, because you can really see, you know, solar gain and shadows and so on really clearly this time of year. So yeah, so the Italian alder look really well. Some of them are up to 6 feet. That's cool. It's let me show you. Behind me, where there's a fence with the wire across, that's where the willow has been planted last year. It's come up to a couple of feet, and by spring that'll be twisted around the wire. Sorry, by spring, by the end of next year it'll be twisted around the wire and start making something like a willow fedge. But every autumn, or at least by midwinter, it'll have been cut down to the height of the wire, so we still get a certain amount of sun into where I'm walking up now, which is the footpath up from the car park. So it's interesting to see just how far that shade will extend across the track, because obviously we don't want, if we do have customers in winter, we don't want them having to walk across, you know, sheet ice and so on in winter. But even with the long shadows at this time of year, doesn't seem to be much of an issue, so that's good. That's actually, you know, I did work it all out at the time, but it's nice to have confirmation by physically seeing it. So yeah, what a beautiful day. Let's have a look. So yeah, and that barn behind me isn't ours, but we do take the water off it. All the water runs off the roof and comes down with the snow melt. I can see it coming down. Now that water, hang on, I'll turn the camera around. That water comes down and into this swale ditch here, then it runs through a pipe under the track and it comes out into this ditch here, and then it runs along the swale, and then it gets picked up by the pond and earthwork at the far end. So even when it looks really frozen solid, it's all still really interesting, because obviously this is on the southish side, so it's picking up quite a bit of solar gain even at that really quite steep angle, and yeah, there's a lot of water running off the roof, so that's interesting. Right, let's have a stroll along this swale. But you can see how wind driven the snow was. It's probably stuck to the pods. Alright, let's cut to the other end. So I'm at the main pond at the other end of that swale. That's interesting. Whoop. This is the biggest pond, but you can see that actually the water level isn't spilling over yet. You know, it's not going down that pipe. So yeah, it's actually reasonably dry. I suspect that as this all melts off, all of this system will fill up again, because we had quite a bit of rainfall a couple of days ago and this whole pond filled. But yeah, that's interesting. You can see there under the stone that's been blocking the loss of warmth. There's no ice underneath that, and of course that's south behind me, so it's had a little bit of thermal gain in there, and the stones will have heated up a little bit, and that stopped it from freezing completely. Interesting. Yeah, the same thing's happened here, even where it's had no sunlight at all. See, just under there. So that's just the effects of the thermal mass. That's really interesting, because it's been below zero, but not massively so. But you can see across the back there that that's still pretty much clear water. Whereas closer to us here, it's still more frozen over. I mean, it's only about, what, a centimetre or so thick. It's not particularly thick ice. That's really interesting. Ah, but just noticed that. And over here you can see where water runs into this pond from the land drain that again there's a little spot there, almost like it's been broken out, but that's completely natural. Interesting. And again, under this lump of wood. See, normally I know pretty much what I'm going to say on these videos. It doesn't always come across that way because I don't script anything, but usually I have a think through. I haven't done any of that today. This is the first time I've stepped out of the house, and I just picked the camera up on the way out because these walks are usually quite interesting, for me anyway. That's very cool. Right, let's go and have a look at the new swale. Yeah, I need to deal with these mulch mats. You can see they've been lifting up. They need to have more stones put on them really. And I've lost some of these rodent protection collars as well. I need to put them back on. We had about 50 miles an hour a few weeks ago, and it took a lot of them out. But I am concerned about vole damage to these. These are the unusual genetics, the improved genetics, sea buckthorn, and these are blackcurrant. But it's the buckthorn I'm mostly concerned about because they're more difficult to replace. I wouldn't want vole damage, but really we're not likely to get a huge amount of vole damage now. We did in the first year or so, but now we've had a weasel move in, and there's a cat moved in, well, a couple of cats. Actually, I think they've been here all along, but the weasel lives up this end of the field somewhere, we're not sure where. That's where we tend to see it, and that's a real predator. Never stops, and that's really knocked down the population of all the rodents. So you can see here, there's still actually plants alive under the surface down in there, so they're going to really come on come spring. So I like to get the planting up more all around this bank so we get less erosion. It's a fairly clay laden soil, there shouldn't be too much, but still, actually there is a little bit of ice here. It's not completely free. There's a spot over there that's free, I can see. But so if there was fish in this pond, which there isn't at the moment, but if there was, we'd still be getting that gas exchange, so they're not going to run into difficulty with the water turning toxic for them if it's frozen over for too long. But look, little footprints. It's a good thing at this time of year with the low sun coming in at an angle. You get to really see footprints well. So I don't know if that's the weasel or something running away from the weasel, or something the weasel will want to eat anyway. So I'll have to have a look at them later and do a bit of research online, see what I can find out. So right, I'm going to go down now and have a look at the next pond down. Now before I go down, I'll have a look at this swale. This is the only swale. All of the earthworks are set so that I can drain them in winter when everything's saturated. As I say, we had a really heavy rainfall the other day, and everything got full. And this swale here is the only one so far that hasn't got a drain fitted to it. It's going to happen between now and late spring. Let's say it's going to be done by hand. But you can see that took all of the water up slope. So everything from behind the pods all the way down. You can see how far we are from the barn. That's what, a good acre and a half maybe. All of that water, what wasn't held in the ponds, well, the pond, and a certain amount in the soil of course, all ended up in this swale. And this hasn't got a drain to take it off at the ground level, so it all built up. And this was the spillway at the far end over there. There's another little pond, we're not going to go and see that today, but that was full, that was overflowing, the spillway had activated. I would have come out and filmed it, but yeah, I'm not filming at 40 mile an hour winds. That's not fun with rain. And so yeah, that pipe when it comes in will drain out to here, and then there'll be a largish pond here. There'll be an island in it, but it won't be a particularly deep one. It'll dry out in summer probably, and that will overspill into this swale here, which we call the willow swale, because it's where we're growing the Bowles hybrid willow. It'll be a biomass crop for running the house. You can see how well the willow does on these swales. Really loves it. So just where my head is there in shadow, you can see that's been cut back a couple of times, and that is a 2.5 year old cutting. So this swale feeds into this pond. Now this is interesting because you can see here the side that's opposite is the sun up there. So this is the side that faces it here. You can see that rock, I mean it's had a little bit of snow build up, but you can see that's kept clear, and there's a lot of rock along this edge here, and that has kept this section here from freezing. That's very interesting. Cool. Let's go and have a look around the other side here. Something I want to show you. So you can see this section that's clear here hasn't happened from thermal mass. That's happened because of running water. Now you can actually, quiet, so you can actually hear water trickling, and that's running out down there. There's a little hole, and what that is one of the land drains that crisscross these, the entire drain area. You can see how much land drains into Loch Watton's down there, and these things run all over the landscape. So that's where unfortunately I've clipped one. I've repaired it twice. It keeps going. It means I've got to dig out a large section here, which I could wait until I've got a digger in next. I'm hoping to have one in the summer, but yeah, there's always loads to do with the digger. When it's here, there's always a bit of a rush, so I'm going to carve that out by hand. I'm going to tamp and compact the clay, and I'm going to do a new repair on it, but I'm going to put a vertical pipe monk in rather than have it come up and then use the spillway. There's a lot of water ends up in this pond whenever it sort of runs. Any sort of rain, and this pond fills up to the level that's held by that, involuntary drain there. It's a nice pond. This one is the first one I dug, so yeah, I'm going to fit a vertical drain because I'd like to have it a couple of inches higher than it is currently, but not much more than that. I don't want it to saturate that topsoil there along the spillway, because it'd soak all down, and everything would be saturated downhill from that, and I don't want that. But yeah, that's interesting. So anywhere there's running water, that tends to have a huge knock-on effect. You can see here, that is the side that's facing the sun behind me, and that's completely melted off with that direct solar gain on the slope to the south. I have read, I've got no way of verifying it of course, but I have read that for every 5 degrees of slope that you've got sunwards, you gain the equivalent of 100 mile, travelling 100 miles south. So if you get a steep enough slope, you can be down at the Scottish borders effectively in terms of solar gain at least. So that's interesting. So I'm just heading into the crater garden, and I've noticed here, this down here is one of the mulch mats from up on the new swale. So you see how far the wind's taken that when it all went. They need to be replaced. They weren't really weighted down with enough for the sort of winds that we had fairly soon afterwards. You can see on the south side of the barn there's no snow at all, and yet there's a good few inches on the other side from the house, or a bit opposite the house. It won't have had as much snow. The wind was coming in from the north, so towards us here, so the other side's picked up more of it. But still, that's completely melted off. There was snow on it first thing, and you can see on the crest here, the ebbings are doing really well. This is Elaeagnus ebbingi. It's very wind fast, evergreen, beautiful bush, and we got loads of them all along the crest. You can see there's one every metre or so, and they'll go all the way around to about there. So as they come up, and they'll come up to like 4 or 5 metres, that'll create a huge lens pointing south. It'll give us an even better microclimate down in here. But you can see already that's actually wet, so it's not just that no snow built up, you can see where it's actually melted off. So that's cool. It's the clove artichoke. It'll be interesting to see what that does in spring. I'm hoping we'll get lots of them this year. And the Asturian tree cabbage, that's still hanging in there, and that's dropped a load of seeds. Some of them are actually sprouting on the seed head itself. See, that's interesting here. This is one of them land drains. This actually clipped it. This was an accident, this crater garden initially. But this bit here, the water runs in there, and because that water's coming up from underground, that's at 9 degrees, steady year round, so it's I'm sure it cools off as it comes up to the surface, but this is always clear water. So it's an interesting place to come and look at prints and see what wildlife's around. That's pretty cool. and then that runs down here, little gully into the pond itself, and that's pretty frozen up. But you can see that where the outlet is, so the water comes in, goes down underneath the ice, then comes up at the other side as it exits. So again, that tends to stay quite warm. And look, the stone bench is actually wet with snow melting. So that's how much you can see that on the far side of it, that's still frozen solid. There's no melting at all occurring. Whereas on the sunward side, that's actually melting off as we go. So yeah, I mean, that is beyond perpendicular to the winter sun behind me. But still, that's dramatic. You can really see the difference all around. And it's interesting with these smaller ponds. So even where there's stones put right into the edge, actually at the waterline, and shaped to maximise that sun absorption and release to the water, try and keep it cleared off. You can see even there, it's pretty much frozen solid all around it. There's slight gaps. There probably would be air exchange taking place anyway, or gas exchange taking place. So there are a couple of fish in this pond. But that's interesting. Yeah, so this remains clear all year. And again, we get a lot of wildlife coming in to feed, and to drink down here, because there's always free water. So it's a really interesting place to come. In summer, it's uncomfortable to sit down here. It can get so warm. And that's going to become even more pronounced as time goes on. And the shrubs come up around it and really protect it. That's really interesting. But you can see down here where it's still in the shade, that is still frozen solid. I got plans for this little suspended pond here, and that's we're in a real, so yeah, that's still a good centimetre or so of ice in there. This doesn't dry out even in summer, really. Very, very, very rarely does it freeze. Does it dry out? So I've got plans for that little pond this year. Right. I think we're pretty much coming to an end of this walk. Partly because my hand's freezing from holding the camera. But you can see over there, where are we? Over there, there's the duck house. And you can see how that window and the roof is angled to pick up winter sun. First thing in the morning, the sun comes up more or less directly behind me. So you can see they have a nice little bit of sun first thing in the morning, just to warm up. There's a bird telling me off somewhere, I can hear it. Which probably means, I can see it. It's just on that post there, you probably can't see it with the camera, but that's having a good shout at me. So, he possibly wants a drink. Right, I'll tell you what I will do. We'll go and see the chickens quick, but I'll cut the camera because otherwise my hand's gonna freeze. Actually, on the way to the chickens, I've just come here, and bear in mind this wall is about 2 feet thick. There's no insulation, nothing at all, and it's not warm. You wouldn't want to lie on something that cold for long, but that actually feels warmer than my hand does currently. And that's my left hand, so that's been in my pocket most of the time. That's amazing. So that's just the solar gain effect from the sun as it came up, and it's had maybe 4 hours at this time of year of direct sun, and that actually feels warm to the touch. That's amazing. So that just goes to show that when we finally finished with the site as it is, and this building's been renovated, and it's a big building, so that south facing face is going to pick up, with the conservatory against it, will pick up that morning sun and heat the whole building. That's amazing. I was not expecting that. I just wanted to test it just as a fairly standard observation that I do on my way around. Whereas this side, oh yeah, that's much colder. You can see, that's the danger. Just stepped on ice, on glass. You can't see much this time of year. That is noticeably colder. That's amazing. Let's go around to the other side and feel the north side. I expect that to be even colder. There you go, see? Just that bit of slope there, you can see how much the snow's still on that. And on that side, there's not even, you can hear drips around the other side with all the snow melting off. None of it here. and that is very, very cold indeed. Yeah, that's uncomfortable to put my hand on. So that is incredible. You know, I mean, it's basic physics, none of it's complicated in principle, but it's still really interesting when you get a strong physical manifestation of it. Right, let's go see the chickens. Now we've got a poultry lockdown on currently because of avian flu. But let's have a look at this. Hey Chucks, here we come. Wow, that's warm. And that is almost uncomfortably warm. Now I'm wearing a down jacket, but still. Hey chickens, they produce a huge amount of heat. Come on, there we go. Breakfast. Oh, yeah, it's starting to steam up. That is quite warm in here. So before the camera gets too steamed up, I'm going to come out. But that is really comfortable. Stop pecking my boot. Go on. There we go. Right. And this structure is a greenhouse made from 50% recycled materials, built on the south side of a shed, outbuilding, workshop, whatever you want to call it. Again, that solar gain is amazing. The idea is that will heat the structure behind it, and it really works. That's an unheated structure. It's the idea originally was for this to be backfilled and for it to be partially earthbound, but I've never got around to filling the divot because this whole area is getting reworked. But that is incredible. Let's have a look here. This is something I want to have a quick check at. This is the chickens' summer quarters. This is the eggmobile. There you go. So even with a slight north-facing slope, that is still completely covered in snow. This side is completely covered in snow, but if we walk around it, that side, on both sides, is completely melted off. Solar gain is amazing. That is extraordinary. And yet, the grassed slopes, like this is the paddy field, that's normally fed from the duck pond, that's all been dropped down for the winter while the chickens are in. You can see a little bit that has melted off more than it has on the others, but really where there isn't stone, it's a negligible effect, whereas where there's rock facing south, that makes a huge difference to the solar gain. Right, I'm going to call that good because my hand is really cold, but yeah, that's been really interesting for me anyway. I'll edit this down and see how short I can get it. It's not it's nothing look, even on the caravan you can see that is that's frozen solid. There's no melting occurring on the north side at all, so that's interesting. I'll be glad when all this is gone. So we've got a door and some double glazed windows. They're going into a project very soon in the next couple of weeks, but I need slightly better weather than we've had to get going with that. It's there's no animal tracks down here. Normally down here we'd see cat prints coming up. I haven't seen any cat prints anywhere, so maybe there was more snowfall after the cats had been hunting, because normally we see them this time of year. Anyway, I'm going in to get warmed up. Hope you enjoyed the tour.